This is an interview to mark the 20th anniversary of the Alexander Teacher Training School in London, founded and run by Anthony Kingsley. Hello Anthony.
Hi.
First of all, I would like to congratulate you the anniversary.
Oh, thank you. It's gone very quickly.
Let's start with how it all began. Can you briefly describe how you personally got into the technique and then how the school came about?
Okay, so I got into the technique quite by accident. I was reading a book accidentally about the Alexander technique called The Alexander Principle. I picked it off a shelf when I was staying in someone's house in Jerusalem, and I couldn't sleep that night, and there was a whole bookshelf of interesting books on psychology and philosophy, and I picked one out called The Alexander Principle by Dr. Barlow, read it from cover to cover. The same night I just went through another book called Bioenergetics, which was about somatic psychotherapy. So anyway, I must have been about 21, 22 years old, and I was really impressed with it, and I decided when I went back to London to look up the author, Dr. Barlow, which I did, and he said, oh, come along, come for a session, and that was the beginning. 1978, I think it was. Yeah. And then got very interested in it. He passed me on to a teacher called Rosemary Knott, and started having lessons in London. 1978 I went to Israel, did a master's degree in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and in 1982 I started an Alexander Teacher Training course with Shmuel Nelkin. Came back to England in 1986, 87, and started to work as an Alexander teacher, and then I visited various Alexander Teacher Training schools, in particular Misha Magidov's and also Eleanor and Peter Rebo's school. And after about a year of offering my work 2 or 3 days a week at Misha Magidov's school, he asked me to become one of his assistant trainers. And that was in 1989. And that started my journey as a trainer.
Well, the second part of the question was how did it all happen? How did you...
Right, so around 2003, Misha Magidov's school was going through a bit of a difficult time. He was going backwards and forwards to look after his very poorly wife who had cancer, and the school was getting a little bit disturbed. And there was a changeover in personnel, and essentially I was the last man standing with Misha. And when he went back to Israel one term and asked me to look after it, he was asked by our society to either stay looking after the school or to pass it on, and he decided to pass it on at that point to me. And I applied to become my own head of training, and that was about 20 years ago. Yeah.
What were your visions and perhaps illusions when you started the school, or when you took over the school?
I think at the beginning it was such a difficult job because I was taking over the school. There were about 12 or 13 students that hadn't chosen to be with me, and they weren't very happy about it. They chose to be with Misha, and Misha was now living in Israel, not head of training anymore. And I said the first thing I decided to do was to say to all the students, look, I know you didn't come for me, and I'm here right now in a new role. If you want to go to any other school in London, please feel free. And if you want to stay, we'll have hopefully a good ride, because it's new for me and it's new for you. 12 out of 13 stayed, and I began my early experience as a trainer, and it was really learning on the job. I had no idea really how to run a school. I had an idea how to train, how to work with people in 2s and 3s, helping them develop skills of how to be a teacher. But I didn't know how to run a school. And I had to learn quite quickly, because they were not a happy lot, and I had to work with the group dynamics, with unhappiness, with sibling rivalries, with all sorts of complications, those that loved me and those that hated me. And if it wasn't for my psychotherapy training, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I think that was a huge resource for me to enable me to navigate the stormy waters of the early years as an Alexander trainer. And my vision was to make it the best Alexander training in the world. And that's still my vision. I'm not sure if it's happened, but I'm still passionate about making it the best training, whatever that means. If I could answer very briefly what it does mean for me, it's amassing the best trainers. I certainly couldn't do it all on my own, and I'm so fortunate to have an amazing team of 4 or 5 dedicated, highly skilled trainers that are with me every week. And without them, it wouldn't be a decent school. And so for me, it's a collaboration. All different trainers offering different things, different aspects of the technique, different strengths. And I've got plenty of weaknesses. And so these other trainers sort of fill in the gaps. I'm very glad I wasn't Alexander, having to do it all on my own at the beginning. I've always had a great support team. And that's enabled me to do my thing and leave them to do their thing, knowing that the students are getting a really rounded experience.
Talking of the training team, that probably also developed over the 20 years, and how did it develop? How are the different flavors fitting into the whole? And
yeah, I've tended to ask people to join me who are committed to the school, and so a number of them have come from other trainings. John Crawford and Delphine. John Crawford was trained by Eleanor Rebo about nearly 40 years ago, and also Delphine must have trained 30-something years ago as well. So they came from different training schools. Other trainers have come from my school. They're graduates that have been absolutely dedicated to the work and have come and wanted to offer their work after they qualify, to deepen their capacities and to offer their skills. And over the years, I've come to see them as having the ability to contribute hugely to the school. So Carlos is one example, a wonderful contributor, and there's a number of others, as you know, who have come in over the years. Caroline Dale trained with Misha Magidov as well. And there's Paul, who trained with Misha, also been trained for over 30 years. And we're all so different. And that's the strength, I think, of the school. Really committed, dedicated teachers with very different styles. Some more interested in the mechanical side of Alexander, some more in the emotional, mental side of Alexander. But that's the wonderful thing about the team. We contribute to the whole.
Were there ever any conflicts about the way how to teach, how to train teachers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can honestly say I've never had a fight with any of the trainers over anything. Never. We're all equal. And I don't see myself as being their sort of employer. Quite the opposite. I see them coming here as unique Alexander trainers to offer their work as part of the tapestry of Alexander training. And I honour their differences. I wouldn't want 5 Alexander clones of Anthony Kingsley. I can think of nothing worse. One of me is quite enough. So I don't see anything problematic in them singing very different songs, different voices. I love it. And at the beginning for students, it's a real challenge. Yeah, but you said this, and Paul says this, and John says this, and Delphine does this with us, and you said, yeah. And the first term or two, it might be a bit confusing, but it'll all come together over time.
How has your view of the Alexander technique changed over the many years you've been teaching it?
So I've been teaching really since 1986. So that's, close on, 38, 40 years. And it has changed dramatically. I was teaching, when I first qualified, more, you could say, mechanistically, trying to get the right neck, head and back relationship, trying to help people improve their postural patterns in the hope that that would improve their emotional reality. As in, my idea of psychophysical unity was that if you can get this upflow, this openness, this stillness and freedom in the body, somehow this will have a wonderful knock-on effect on the mental and emotional apparatus. I think over the years, and it's been gradual, I've become more unitary on this aspect of mind-body, and I don't see it so much that the mind influences the body or the body influences the mind, but actually that the mind and body are two aspects of the same thing called self. And right now I see myself working with a person rather than trying to improve their postural mechanisms. And I see Alexander as more of an education of the mind-body, of the whole psychophysical self. Today I call myself a trauma-informed and emotionally literate Alexander teacher and trainer. And I refer to the school in the same category, that actually the postural patterns cannot operate independently of our emotional history. And so that's deepened. Obviously my own training as a psychotherapist has contributed to seeing Alexander as a holistic system, a somatic, in a way a somatic therapeutic system, alongside you could say the postural improvements. And I can't separate the two things out anymore. Alexander referred to his work as therapeutics and as re-education. And I affirm that. For me, re-education is recovery. It's two people in the same room where the main teacher, the trainer, is contributing to the recalibration, to the regulation of the pupil. And for me, that is the form of education that interests me, where two people work together on the nervous system, which is a mind-body idea.
So, how has your way of teaching your students to become teachers changed over the years?
So, yeah, I think that has changed quite a lot. I would say at the beginning, 20 years ago, I would be more classically introducing the 4 Alexander books, some basic anatomy and physiology, and I would pretty much leave it at that. Today, it's much wider. I include in our necessary literature books like Zen in the Art of Archery, Martin Buber's wonderful I Thou. I bring in recent research in neuropsychology and neurophysiology, like Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, ideas of somatics and how the mind and body collaborate in terms of health and disease. Books like The Body Keeps the Score, When the Body Says No, Gabor Mate. There's so many wonderful and recent researches into mind-body health that I think we're crazy not to incorporate into our work, that wasn't available 100 years ago. So I'm much less interested in the nuts and bolts of the necks and backs, and more involved in the human condition. So that's evolved a huge amount over the years. And I see that the job of a trainer is really to help train students into working with human beings, with the human condition, with the struggles of being human and all that that entails, and not simply equipping them to deal with someone that comes in with a neck problem and a back problem, but all aspects of a nervous system that is overreacting and doesn't know how to recover. That's our work, and it can't be separated into just the mind and just the body. It's mind-body, or psychophysical self, as Alexander put it. That's our work.
How has your understanding of trauma and its impact on our functioning influenced your teaching?
That's a great question. Fundamentally, the answer to that is fundamentally. So the way I understand it is, and we've all been affected by our childhood, by early experiences, adverse childhood experiences, trauma with a capital T, sometimes trauma with a small t, struggles, difficulties. It can be poverty, bereavement, abuse, neglect. It can be so many aspects, rivalry, an ill parent, a single parent family, all sorts of struggles of growing up. All of these early experiences shape us, literally. They shape the mind-body. They shape the postural mechanisms. And they shape the mechanisms through what I will call adaptation. So when difficult things happen, we have to cope. And our whole organism prepares itself to cope with these challenging experiences with patterns of adaptation that help us feel a little bit more safe or managing in an unmanageable situation. We're usually left alone to cope, and it's that sense of aloneness, there's no one there to hold our hand going through the fire, that lead us into all sorts of adaptations. And these adaptations are emotional, postural, biomechanical, neurological, hormonal, and they affect our life and health and our relationships. And I think that is the stuff that Alexander teachers are dealing with. And so when a person comes in with a constantly stiff neck or a braced back or a compressed spine, this isn't just a physiological fix. It's actually unwinding and recovering from and regulating back from the original experience that set us off in this constant reinforcing direction of distress. And we need to get the ball going backwards towards recovery. And sometimes we just can't recover by ourselves. We've somehow lost the key. We've lost the map, how to recover back home, how to regulate, to self-regulate back home to safety. And because these difficult events happened in a two-person situation, a two-person drama, the solution is going to happen in a two-person relationship. The difference being the original experience happened in a two-person drama of unregulation, dysregulation, abuse, neglect, and so on. The recovery can only happen in a two-person situation at the highest levels of safety. And the Alexander teacher is designed, hopefully prepared and trained to offer very high levels of safety so that, unlike in the original situation, the mind-body can find a pathway back to safety and therefore recovery and integration.
How have the findings of modern neuroscience, especially the polyvagal theory, influenced your understanding of the technique? Yeah,
I'm more and more convinced that the future of the Alexander technique lies in embracing the cutting edge of neurological and neuropsychological research. And Stephen Porges is a wonderful example. His idea that we don't have the ability to self-regulate, to recover our balance, our equanimity, our homeostasis after difficult trauma and difficult childhood experiences is so relevant to the Alexander work. And his research has indicated that we need co-regulation, that we need it, not just as a preference or as another string to one's bow, but as an absolute fundamental necessity, that the two-person game is the answer, that the engagement in a situation where the teacher and pupil work together, as I said, at very high levels of safety, which means no criticism, acceptance, empathy, compassion, developing these capacities bit by bit within ourselves and being there fully with another human being, with our particular attributes of Alexander work, is the only way forwards. That it isn't a mechanical trick, that the Alexander technique is not simply passing on information. It isn't that kind of education. It's not that kind of instruction. There's plenty of things you can instruct. There's plenty of information you can impart about necks and backs. But the real Alexander instruction is a Stephen Porges instruction, which is communication through touch and through voice of acceptance, of safety, and it's those communications more than any idea about this bit of the body and that bit of the body. It's the direct, essential communication of human being to human being, which is the vehicle for health and healing.
You sometimes use the term compassionate witness for the Alexander teacher.
It's not my word.
Can you explain it anyway?
Well, I don't really like talking about compassion because most of the time I'm not a very compassionate person. But hopefully, bit by bit, it may be evolving. So I can't really talk about compassion, but when Gabor Mate talks about compassion, he's a doctor who works a lot with addicts, and in his understanding, the compassionate witness is an expression of a quality of relationship that needs to be there in the practitioner, where the practitioner can almost hold the hand of the client, the patient, the Alexander pupil in this case, and bleed along with them.
Doesn't that tie directly into the Cultivating theory?
100%, yes. A compassionate witness would by definition be exhibiting high levels of a safety envelope for the pupil. I just don't think compassion is something you can turn off and on. So I think in a way it's a bit of a problematic term. A bit like safety is a bit of a problematic term because I don't think that's open to choice. And so we come up with a big conundrum when we talk about these things. I certainly can't put myself out there as a practitioner that offers safety and compassion, or even empathy, because I don't believe these are categories that I can choose to be. If you had to ask me, but Anthony, where do these things come from when you do have them, if you do have them, I'd say they come from grist for the mill, from my own struggles, from my own difficult history. And that being a little bit more able to face my own challenges, a little bit more able to sit with my own struggles and my own pains, my own bleeding, my own broken heart, maybe something evolves. Titration, little by little, over the months and years of living, that allows me to be a little bit more available to somebody else. But I think it's so important not to turn these into little hacks of, I think I'll be compassionate and empathic and a witness today to your struggle. I think I'll just turn on safety. Because sometimes I won't be in that zone. Sometimes I'll be arrogant and bombastic, not able to listen, not able to be available. So I see these things as more incremental capacities, that if you're living a more full life, they will somehow evolve, they'll ripen. Little by little, another few lifetimes maybe I'll be able to say, oh, I've got a little bit more of that today, Ruth. But right now, I'll stay on the minimal side of things.
The school seems to attract people who are seeking both personal transformation and professional training. How do you balance the two?
Yeah, I don't think there's a separation. I don't think Alexander training is a professional certificate by itself. If you want a professional certificate, go off and be a plumber or an accountant. Alexander is a personal journey, and the only way you can be a decent professional is by working through the stuff I've been talking about, facing stuff, coming out of your adaptations of safety and defensiveness and holdings, and being able bit by bit to open up to all of who we are, or more of who we are. So you cannot separate your own personal journey from the professional journey. The two have to go hand in hand. Now, I'm okay with someone saying, I just want to come along for your personal stuff. I'll say, fine, you don't have to teach at the end of it. Whatever happens in this school, you will always go along a personal journey. But whether you want a piece of paper at the end, I'm not really bothered about. That for me is not the main thing. Of course, people want to do 3 years because they love the idea of being a professional. And I have to say, I understand that. I love it too. But without it being a personal journey of going through the valley of death, I'm not really over interested in a piece of paper.
The school is sometimes seen as a healing community. How do you and the team cultivate that?
I don't know. I think it's all of us that cultivate the healing group. When the school is working at its best, it is a healing community, which means that people can come here and just be more who they are, more themselves, than outside in the social world. So I want to create a space, along with the trainers, where people come in here and can let some of their masks of social interaction, some of their masks in their everyday relationships soften a little bit. And that can reveal more of who they are or who they're meant to be than outside. So this is a very privileged space where people can come in here and feel a bit more able to be themselves. And we all cultivate that. We cultivate it by hopefully not censoring someone that comes in here and cries or feels upset or feels confused or feels angry, but we affirm it as part of the story, part of the journey of working through stuff, working through history. And if we all work together on this and the students participate in this healing group just as much as myself and the trainers, we all co-regulate together. You could say the whole school is a co-regulatory environment where we support each other. The students working with students support one another in developing the ability to accept and not censor, not criticize, not judge, not demand. And that's quite rare in our society, which is why people love coming in the morning, even though it's early, because they walk into this room and unlike most other spaces, they can just be, rather than play roles. And that's an essential part of the journey for any self-development.
Can you identify some of the core values of your school? Can be words,
I haven't really thought about core values. I suppose the values come out of the practice rather than the practice coming out of the values. So I'd say when we're working well, and over the years, we've probably developed certain values that emanate from the school. So the values would have to include fun, playfulness, safety, rigor, professionalism, ethics, relationship, care, compassion, as values, not as things that we have, but as vision, as a vision of how maybe we want to be at our best.
What are your visions and wishes for the future of the school?
Oh, I take each day at a time. One day at a time. I never thought that this school would carry on and thrive for 20 years. So if I'm looking forward to the next 20 years, I hope it keeps on going in unexpected paths. Who knows what developments may come up in the worlds of health and healing, in somatics, in therapy, in relationships. What can come out of these researches in neuropsychology and neurobiology that can enhance our understanding of what we do in this unique and very, very privileged two-person game. And I'm open to it, and it's exciting. I can't predict it. I just think we have to be true to ourselves. As long as we're true to ourselves, which means not going on along with a dogma from last year, not holding on to what we believe is true from last year, but keeping everything alive, keeping everything open to new options and possibilities, new understanding, so it's true to us inside, so that we're true to ourselves, not true to an idea, not true to what's written in a book, not even what was true to us yesterday, but keeping things fresh, really fresh, so that we renew ourselves day in, day out, as a new moment. That's really my hope, and I work on that daily, that I want to come in every day. A wonderful psychoanalyst, I think it was Wilfred Bion, said that you should treat each session without memory and without desire and without understanding. So I take that on board very seriously. If we can treat each day, this working day in the room with our Alexander students and trainers, without memory, without desire, without understanding, being fresh to move from the known to the unknown, to new possibilities, that would be my vision, and not hold on to the past.
Thank you very much.
Good. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.